We're excited to have you here on this webinar. We're going to be talking about innovation today. Thanks for all the hellos from folks chatting in. Really excited to have everyone here. We'll be going 1 hour, probably around 30 minutes presentation, and we'll leave the rest for Q&A. My name is Bill Hughes. I am Chief Strategy Officer at LearningObjects. This is an ed tech company. We're based in Washington, D.C. We've been around for about 13 years. We've been a pioneer in learner-centric solutions in the market. Recently we were acquired by Cengage Learning, but we continue to operate as platform companies serving all sorts of companies and schools and innovators, and I'm very excited to talk with you today. Prior to my role, by the way, at LearningObjects right now is focused on the LearningObjects ecosystem, customers and partners who build products and services around our platform, around a digital learning environment that we have. And we are a very open company. We are very active in the standards community, IMS and others, and see the growing ecosystem in ed tech, and pretty excited about that. Prior to joining LearningObjects, so you get a little bit of my background, so you understand where I'm coming from. I spent about 10 years at Pearson as an executive there, the last 6 of which I was focused on strategy and innovation, partnerships and investments. I led Pearson's move into adaptive learning with their MyLab platform, partnering with Newton Technology, and I co-founded a company that's now known as Intellis Learning, which is kind of...
Hey, Bill. Bill,
yeah.
It's Court. We're getting a couple of comments that people can't hear you.
Okay.
If you could just speak up a little louder, I think that would help.
Okay. I see. Hold on one second. This should be better.
Okay. I'm going to go back and mute everybody now. But thank you. That works.
All right, great. Sorry about that. I've been for the last decade at Pearson, and in addition to doing strategy and partnerships there, I led Course Compass in the 2005-2007 time frame, and it grew from about 200,000 users to 2 million users and became the MyLabs platform. Prior to that, I had spent another almost 2 decades in the technology world in high-growth, high-tech companies ranging from Cambridge Technology Partners, where I was about the 20th person, and Sapient, where I was about the 200th person, and Cambridge Innovation Center, where I was one of the managing directors. The latter is an innovation incubator next to MIT that's responsible for some pretty interesting things. And then I did some strategy work at Mercer Management Consulting, now it's called Oliver Wyman. And I share this just to share, I have maybe a non-traditional view of the education space. I really look at it as an outsider. I feel like an insider in terms of my passion, but an outsider from the standpoint of my perspectives. So I hope to share some of those with you today in this talk around innovation without compromise. So I don't know that there would be much dispute in the statement that there is an innovation mandate in education. The real question, I think, is, well, what's driving it? If we can understand that, then we can understand how we need to respond. Well, I was at South by Southwest EDU last week, and there were a number of discussions around the learner and why learning was so hard, and a light bulb went off. I began to realize the reason it's so hard for learners is that students are actually the glue for their own learning experiences. And imagine, if you will, the following scenario. If I tell you I need you to take on 3 to 5 part-time jobs that have different bosses, your jobs will all change in a few months. And you need to get promoted in each job. Oh, and by the way, make sure your personal issues don't get in the way. So that is what's making students become unglued. And we wonder oftentimes why student success varies and why student retention in a lot of programs is problematic. And the reason is not simply because they don't have the right content, though our parent company is a great content company, and it's not because they don't have an adaptive learning path alone, but it's because they're the ones who are holding the whole portfolio of things together. And we as an education community have really not given them the infrastructure that they need to effectively and efficiently navigate and move through this world. So as we think about, that learner and where we want things to go and where the market has been taking us, it's bringing the learner to the center of everything. That's what's driving innovation. That learner wants a relevant learning experience so that they're prepared for 21st century careers. They want to be engaged, and if they're engaged, you'll be able to retain them in programs, and those programs need to be accessible, whether it's accessible because of their learning style or because of their condition in life. They need a return on education. They don't want us to waste their money, and they want us to help them achieve their learning goals. And what's interesting as you think about learner centricity, it has a lot of parallels to the world of process redesign made popular in the 1990s, the time during which most industries revised all of their technology systems and organized them around the moments of truth for their customers. Single point of contact, 1-800 number for all your calls, which became eventually an app in your pocket that could support customer service across an entire enterprise. These are the things that happened in other industries, in airlines and in banking and in retail, but they didn't really happen in education. So what does it look like now for the learner to be at the center of our whole educational experience, as opposed to the educator being at the center or the course being at the center, or the institution and in its operations and its processes being at the center? I believe that competency-based education is the industry response to learner centricity. And when I say CBE, I don't necessarily mean the debate between CBE and seat time. That's an artifact of regulators and certain structures that I think misses the more important aspect of CBE, which is it is the reorganization of all of the capabilities and processes of the institution around the learner. While this applies in K-12 as well, I'm going to speak to this from a higher ed perspective because I'm more familiar with it, but feel free during Q&A to raise questions about whether it be K-12 or corporate learning if those are your areas of interest. And this chart here simply shows an example of ways that you can organize various processes in an educational environment around the moment of truth for that learner. So what does this all mean for innovation in the sector? Well, one thing learner centricity means is ever increasing technology demands. So on the one hand, we've moved from a simple flat experience, say with e-books, bringing those online to a richer experience where we bring homework and a more dynamic experience online through the use of LMSs, course media, item banks, and so forth. So we have auto-graded assignments that have really come to the fore in certain disciplines. But innovators haven't stopped there. They've pushed further into learner-centricity, more into really a personalized learning concept, which means a lot of things: personalization, adaptivity, competency-based, mobile, social, and different modalities supported, whether it be self-study or instructor-led, a much richer use of real-time analytics, which is essential when you reorganize processes around the learner, so that everyone, whether it's the learner or the institution delivering the learning, knows what's going on and has the same view of the world. And then also things like machine automation. And anyone who's actually been involved in building out some of these capabilities or adopting them realizes that they're quite expensive to do on your own. So along with the increase of learner centricity has come this increase in cost and complexity. And that's where the first challenge or the first compromise to innovation comes, which is that there's an affordability threshold that almost every institution and even company supporting these institutions hits. And as somebody who's worked in two of the largest education companies in the world, I've seen even in those well-funded companies where they can scale pretty massively, unless you do things a certain way, and we're going to talk about this in this conversation, you could end up running out of money. And you know, one of my former employers spent over $1 billion on ed tech, and they still don't feel like they have what they need to serve the market, which really says it's not just about money. There's something else that's going on, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in this conversation. In particular, I want to talk about design, like how you design the solutions that you want to build, and I'll come back to why design is important for you in a moment. Pardon me. But I want to talk about cell phones for a second as an analog, and then apply it back to ed tech. So here you see on the screen what I'll call a monolithic design. And it's very effective because it's optimized for a specific usage. The design choices are made by the creator of that product, and it's really made for one thing. It's made for sending and receiving calls, maybe text messages. It's very good at what it does, and that's all it does. Try to use it for something else, and you could just imagine the problems you run into. But in comes the iPhone, which has got a different approach. And it's not just that Steve Jobs is a genius, he is, but there's something behind that genius which is fairly well understood in engineering and design circles, is the concept of layered design. And that's where the goals for the design are different. They're not designed for specific usage, but rather optimized for innovation. And in that case, the adopter of the product, whether that's the user or the owner of a platform, for example, is the one who gets to make design choices, not simply the product creator. So what does layered design look like? Well, on an iPhone, you've got the platform layer first, and that's the layer that really is about what is your device, what capabilities does it have, how much memory, how fast is the processor, does it have support for cellular data or not. The next layer is the OS layer, the operating system layer, and that's where you have these pervasive services like security, the thumbprint, for example, that new Touch ID technology or commerce in the form of the App Store or the iTunes Store, gestures, graphical idioms, and then a set of common services that are made available to programmers by APIs, application program interfaces, so that developers can build these nice capabilities into their phone. So I have do a lot of my banking online and my financial services online. In the last 3 months, all of my banks have rolled out Touch ID. Now, they didn't build Touch ID themselves. They simply inherited that from the OS layer of the platform. And in that, to that point, the app layer is the last layer. We're most familiar with that one, where each app can kind of take over the user experience. That's how Apple has designed that layer. So hopefully you get a sense of what these layers are and have an intrinsic sense of why they might be important and why they may have a different result in the kind of innovation experience that someone can have if one chooses a layered design versus a monolithic design. So let's take a look at our own industry now and think about monolithic design and how might that affect innovation and cause us to compromise. Well, there's one set of objectives for systems. I put them in the category of instructor-led learning experiences. So my own company, Cengage, has a great platform, MindTap, and it works a certain way, and instructors love it. And they love it because it works that way. And it works that way pretty much every semester, and it works that way regardless of the content that's rolled in. And, of course, it's supposed to be good for students as well, but it works a particular way. And it doesn't, for example, have competencies built into that. So now an institution asks for competencies, and they're out of luck if they're using an instructor-led learning experience. The other instructor-led learning experiences that are most pervasive actually are from the LMS themselves, which acts as sort of a WordPress for the instructor and for their course. But when you need more capability at another level, moving from a course-centric mode to a learner-centric mode, there are vendors who have come out with competency-based systems and adaptive systems that express a particular vendor-designed learning experience. And you may know of a few that might implement a competency model or an adaptive model. One might support mobile, one might be better around accessibility, one might integrate with other systems more than another. But the problem that you have with these off-the-shelf systems, regardless of whether they're centered around the course and the instructor or the learner through special vendor solutions, is that because they're off-the-shelf and because, parenthetically, they're designed monolithically, the design choices have all been made for you. And that's good if you want easy choices, and many do, and many get a lot of benefit out of that, and there's definitely value in that. The problem comes when you need to be more strategic, when you need to be the designer of the systems that you use. And that's where a lot of people find themselves compromising and leaning back on someone else's strategy, whether it be the vendor's strategy in the vendor design solution or maybe the LMS capabilities limited or locked into that. Some folks who've tried to break away from that off-the-shelf model have ventured into the places where they do have a little bit more control over their destiny, which is the content-oriented learning experiences, where they can have a more differentiated experience. And you can imagine EPUB 3, or if you're not familiar with that standard, the iBook model of a multimedia experience. It's definitely richer and maybe more interesting and more learner-centric in some ways than the instructor-led experience, but it has very limited capabilities in terms of functionality and workflow that are needed to go beyond simply what the course-centric content experience would be. So you can imagine that last upper right-hand corner quadrant is the magic quadrant of being able to have great taste, less filling. You want your capabilities that are strategically driven, so they come from your strategy, not from a vendor strategy, not from the constraints of an LMS, and yet you want the affordability of an off-the-shelf solution. So that's where you end up with the tension, and folks either go and they try to build things out that fit their strategy and they risk going broke doing it, or they pull back into one of these other monoliths. There is another way, however. And that different approach is something that the market's beginning to call a digital learning environment. And there have been some articles written about this. Last year EDUCAUSE has done a study around the next generation digital learning environment. Some of the work that folks like Michael Feldstein in the industry have done have talked about a more open platform that allows for best of breed to all work together. I know the work of IMS is trying to support things like that. And I want to kind of talk about not simply, particular solutions, but the concept that's behind them. And I think that's maybe a more useful way for you to engage in this topic. But let's talk about what the digital learning environment is. First of all, it is learner-centric. So all the things we talked about having the learner at the center come into play, about personalized learning, about competency-based learning, and so forth. It's outcomes-oriented. So that's another aspect of being learner-centric, is it's tied to the outcomes the learner wants to see, and it's demonstrating the progress of that learner towards those outcomes and how those outcomes accrue and can be pulled together into meta outcomes, such as certificates or degrees or things like that. It's composable, so that means that it can take a number of different, even disparate content, technologies, capabilities, and compose them together into an experience that is orchestrated by that digital learning environment. It's open and integrated, which makes that composability work, and it's layered in its design. So I want to actually talk about what that means, that layered design. Well, the first thing that happens when let's say an institution is seeking on building out a program. Maybe it's a competency-based MBA program. The first thing they have to think about is, well, what are the competencies that they want their learners and graduates to have? So they may think about their own institutional competencies. They may actually borrow from industry competencies. So, for example, there's some work in the area of sustainability that is not defined by the institution, but rather the industry. And then employers who are looking for specific capabilities may also have their own set of competencies that inform what goes into that offering. And again, there may be standards like DQP from Lumina, the degree qualification program, I think is what it stands for. Never use an acronym and then try to explain it unless you know what it is, so my apologies there. Those things are now packaged into programs, courses, modules, and success measures. So that really defines what the product is, the offering of that institution at the level of their goals.
And that's often done in spreadsheets today and then handed off to someone, and then someone forgets the spreadsheet, and it's very hard to enforce these concepts all the way through a system. Certainly in an LMS, there's no place for this information to go. The next level of design and design choices that are made is at the experience level, where one has to choose what kind of learning experience do I want to facilitate. Is this personalized self-study, instructor-led, peer-to-peer, mentoring, or combination of those? And then next, this is the part that we're typically more familiar with, is the developing of instructional design in courseware. And that may even break into a couple of layers of apps, and those apps may be e-book readers, e-readers, or video players, or simulations, or games, for example, collaboration tools, what have you. They may be simple just reading, and maybe as complex as some authentic assessment capabilities. And then the content that supports that may come from a number of places, and it may be under various licensing regimes, whether OER, self-published, commercial licensed content, or something else. And that makes up the activities that a learner performs in the course of this program that's been defined. And then, of course, the learner's results need to be tracked. And that tends to be to identify a couple more layers of design and design choices for an institution that is building out a solution for themselves. The one layer is the dashboard layer, so what do users of different types see? What do students see? What do instructors see? What do administrators see in terms of analytics, in terms of the personalization and customization of their own homepage, things like that. And then what about those artifacts that are the result of the student work? Where are those located? How can those be shared, whether they be as portfolios, shared privately or publicly, as grade books used by the educators and administrators, or as transcripts, badges, and certifications that become the credential for that student to show and share their progress in learning. And then finally, there's a connecting layer around access to systems as well as integration with other systems. So this is an example of layered design for education. And you can see in the gold boxes all the different configuration choices, almost like the configuration choices you would have for an iPhone or for a car, for that matter. And the power of layer design is that at each layer, if you have a design that allows you to make these choices, then you can tailor much more precisely how your learning environment works and how it supports your strategy. So let's give an example of layered design. And I'm going to run through this quickly and then give a chance for folks to ask some questions. This example is with a partner that we're working with. They were collaborating with a publisher who wanted to offer a global MBA program with a sustainability capability, and that sustainability piece is important because the AACSB, the accreditation body for business schools, has mandated as of 2016 that every school have a sustainability component to their education. So they wanted to offer something that would allow for two things. One is a turnkey system for those people who want something out of the box as a competency-based global MBA program. And they also wanted to make sure that they had an easy way of plugging in to existing programs accreditation capabilities around sustainability. And plugging in meant not only conceptually, but actually practically they wanted what ended up being called write once, learn anywhere capabilities, so that they built the courseware in one place, and it can run in any LMS or standalone. So I'm not going to go into the details here, but this is how this group decided to customize the learning experience using layer design, the features and capabilities that they wanted to highlight or turn on versus turn off. So what did that look like? Well, let's look at the different layers. The first set of screens I'll show you show a courseware authoring and publishing environment which is designed around a competency-based model so that it supports the layer design that we were talking about at the program and at the learning experience layer. So here is where the competencies would be built out and tied to the success measures that measured demonstration of those competencies, and also would form the foundation of the connection with content in learning experiences in a course of study. The next thing they selected was the learning process they wanted to use, which was a playlist concept where a student would be presented with something and then in line with that they could say, up next, take a quiz, up next, watch a video, so that there was a very clear sequence the student can go through, which enabled them to make this available in both a homework mode and a blended classroom mode, as well as a self-study mode. They also wanted to have, as part of the learning process, the instructor-led concept. So this is just a iconic example of how an instructor might see students and assignments in a particular course of study. They had to create learning activities, and in this case, they were pulling not only from standard content assets like item banks for tests and quizzes, tools like discussion boards, but also from LTI, third-party LTI tools like marketing simulations or games, or something like a vital source library for content. So let's take a look at what this looks like when we hit play, as it were, and the student experience kicks in. So first they may see inherited right from the system, here are the program capabilities that, that the learner needs to go through. And at any point in time, as you can see on the left-hand side with the star to the left of program view and then the other icons below that, they all have circles around those, which are progress bars. So a learner can see at any point in time across that competency map where they stand. And there are other views of that, like if in the upper right-hand corner, if they click the My Progress bar, they'd see another view of their progress. Drilling into one of those competencies, Maria, the student here, can see her learning path, and that then shows some sub-competencies that they're going to be working on. And as she clicks into that, she can see the things that she specifically needs to do in her progress along those. As Maria is going through, in this case, the module on determining the carbon footprint, she can show what she knows in this set of modules before she spends too much time going through the content, so she can orient herself and get a sense of how much work she's got to do. So she'll go through some sort of, in this case, a very simple multiple choice test, but also has concepts like space repetition and confidence levels in terms of feedback for the student. They can see their progress and their score. In this case, Maria did pretty well. So on the left, those icons that were in red before which meant she hadn't touched them, are green now, which means that she's demonstrated knowledge of these areas, and she can click into them if she wants, or she could just move past them. So personalized little to her. Her process continues in this playlist model, showing her pieces of content. Here's a video that's just plugged in, and then you can see next up, putting it all together on the bottom, carbon footprints, and how long that activity might take. So again, this particular experience is very centered around the learner, what they're trying to do, and because it's in the context of a competency model, it also provides a concept of putting the learner at the center of their entire programmatic experience. Here you can see content from a vital source reader. So that's the student experience. And as they've gone through that, they've been performing things, they've had some outcomes. The system needs to make sure that it's tracked all these things. So now another aspect of a learner-centric system is learner-centric views into that progress. So here's another graphic, and you'll notice it uses different competencies from the ones that we had before. This is for an art program. I happen to like their design, so I tossed it in here. But this sort of shows progress along these competencies overall and within a particular course. So you can sort of see how far a particular course is helping you along and how far you're going across all of your courses and these competencies. An instructor may have a snapshot view of their students, which is another way of thinking about learner progress. A grade book, of course, is another way of thinking about progress, and these are options that that this group has selected. And then something that's new that we've been pioneering in our work with IMS is the extended transcript standard. This is a collaboration with several universities under the auspices of ACRO, the Registrars Association, as well as several vendors who've committed to implementing a standard for a competency-based transcript or an extended transcript that not only can be used to organize information more precisely, but as you can see in this chart, can link from the competency to the evidence of that competency in, say, a portfolio. And then this information, based on the rules and preferences of the institution and of the student, can actually be shared publicly in a secure way. So that's a little bit about what this all might look like in action. Just a couple final words in terms of what the enabling technology is for this kind of digital learning environment. Our product, Difference Engine, is a digital learning environment. We think it's one of the best ones out there. It's got millions of users on it already. We've been kind of operating quietly, enabling other products and other companies with this technology, and it really functions as kind of an operating system for learning. It sort of serves the operating system layer and the platform layer, like we were talking about before, to allow these other layers that we were describing of the product and the learner experience and their results and outcomes and so forth, all to be the domain of the innovator. So we sort of see the courseware piece, programware, courseware, as the place where innovation really needs to happen, and we have some supporting technologies that avoid the expense of figuring out how to do adaptive and having single sign-on that interoperates with every LMS and a whole bunch of other things that an authoring system for organizing all that content and making it available and interoperable. So that kind of platform capability is how we think about a digital learning environment. And in particular, it has these four components: a digital publishing system that implements what we call three-pillar design, where competencies or capabilities, learning activities, and the measurements of those capabilities can all be aligned in a single system, and a robust system for managing digital assets and managing courses and modules and so forth. And it's built from a publishing standpoint to handle fairly complex things like version control and so forth. So that's pretty rich, and there are a number of publishers in education who are using this platform already with millions of their users. The second part is a competency-based learning system with a personalized experience that's aligned to the work flow of that learning process. There's support for learner portfolios, and if anyone's heard of Pathbright, that was another company that was acquired by Cengage, and we're working closely with them to tightly integrate their platform into their capabilities and ours to make that kind of seamless competency transcript linking to portfolios something that is beautiful and really works for students, and then custom dashboards and outcomes reporting. The third is that this platform has delivered multiple learning experiences, whether a personalized competency-based program where we call it, or an adaptive practice platform, such as is used in one of the leading adaptive quizzing platforms in the nursing space, as well as an exam prep that's used in Europe for medical licensure. And then we also support third-party integration using LTI as a technology of basically any LTI-compliant applications that can be plugged in and orchestrated into your courseware. And finally, there's a flexible configuration system. Sorry about that. That supports a write once, learn everywhere concept of integrating into and plugging courseware written anywhere and plugging it into an LMS, supporting different hosting requirements, and can be skinned and branded to your heart's content. So that's a little bit on Difference Engine, the sponsor of this webinar. So with that, I'd like to pause my sharing and open it up to questions. And of course, you can see my Twitter handle and the company's Twitter handle. So Courtney, if you want to help me facilitate this next session, this next segment, that'd be really great.
Sure. I think I just took everyone off mute, and so if you would like to type in the chat box, the right-hand side for questions, please go ahead and do so.
Yeah. Oh. Hey, Courtney.
Muted.
I'm going to stop sharing the screen here so I can see my dashboard better here. And I'm looking for questions. Has anyone written questions in the chat box? I haven't seen any here. If you have a question, maybe you can type it in there. And okay, let's see. Here we go. Does this program have an EHR component? Can someone explain? I'm going to come back to that if you can explain EHR, because it may not, if I don't know what it is, or it might be spelled wrong, or it might be that we have it and I just recall it something else. In terms of write once, learn everywhere, a couple of people have asked about that. So often what happens with content, learning content, is that it's built into LMSs, loaded as content files, and the LMS is then responsible for playing those files in some sort of learning experience. That works okay, but there's some limitations. One limitation is that it's expensive if you do that a lot and go from school to school to school with different configuration. It means you've got to load your content into each configuration. So that takes time and money. And I think more importantly and strategically, if you are a provider of content, like for example, this company that we're working with that has a sustainability curriculum, they get no feedback and no data on the usage of their content. So they're not able to help their customers make sense of that usage by students. They're not able to create information products easily that can then be made available to these institutions so that learners are better supported. What Write Once, Learn Everywhere does allows you to literally write your courseware into a fairly flexible courseware, I'll call it container, a digital container, and then instead of loading or uploading files into an LMS, you literally link to it and run it as an app, as like an LTI tool from an LMS. And the benefits there are that, on the one hand, it's very integrated into that existing learning environment through the single sign-on of the LMS and the roster management and so forth and the gradebook reporting. However, the creator of that courseware module can maintain its integrity wherever it's plugged in, and they can also gather all the data for usage. So hopefully that's helpful. Good. In terms of the EHR, the electronic health records, this system doesn't support that per se, but to the degree that there are third-party systems that produce an EHR that can be plugged into a learning experience, say for a nursing program or medical assistant program, then it would be done in that way. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's see, how do you integrate or customize learning system needs from competitive institutions such as University of Phoenix versus University of Michigan? Well, that's a good question. There's two points there. First, they have to be willing, of course, to share their IP. But assuming they are, you know, one of the principles of layer design is around standards. So what the layers do is they define the standards of interoperability. So if University of Phoenix and University of Michigan have very diverse systems, yet both of them have learning experiences in their systems that support LTI, then very simply those things can plug into a digital learning environment's courseware and be experienced by those users the same way that just plugging in HTML content could be experienced. So it could be as simple as a web page that they're publishing, or as complex as a whole simulation environment that they're publishing, and they're just simply linked to by the digital learning experience through LTI. Let's see. Let's see. Just make sure I've got a couple questions on. Let's see about accessibility testing. Twitter handle, by the way, is BillHughes_EDU, at BillHughes_EDU. Thanks for asking. Can we talk about accessibility testing that we've done? We've already done 508 compliance testing and have the appropriate certification for that, and we're in the process of the certification for WCAG, but we've kind of designed with both of those in mind, as well as with mobility in mind. So if you come into our offices and you see the people doing product design, they have iPhones and iPads and Android devices and so forth sitting right on the desk. And when they design the user experience, the first experience they design for is the mobile experience. And when they're able to use a larger screen, they can do more things with it. But what it means is that all of the things that we design, if you go to our website, you can sort of see this as well, are responsive in their design, so they fit nice and neatly and appropriately on a mobile phone as well as a full screen. And we take the same approach to mobile design as to accessibility. So as long as long as you write your content using our editing tools and don't do things that literally create non-compliant, non-accessible content, then you will inherit its accessibility throughout our platform as well as mobile access. Let's see, I just want to hit on a couple more things here, some really good questions. Let's see. What courses/programs can be covered using this system? I'm not sure I understand your question because my answer is any. I don't know that it's not. So if that answer is insufficient, please have a follow-up question. But this is designed very generically so that one can build an arbitrarily complex competency map. It doesn't have to be a competency-based system. You can have a normal, Carnegie model for seat time, and the system will work just fine. But it gives you the superpower, the extra capability of having a learner-centric view across a number of learning goals that you have, however that learning is deployed. Let's see. How much is Difference Engine? I'm a small startup. So that's the beauty of what we've designed. I think given the capabilities that we're talking about having, I've run into a number of startups that are hiring in the Northeast, and I get requests for fill a CTO position or fill a head of engineering position in this company or that, and I'll look at the company and I'll look at what they're doing, and 9 times out of 10 they have no business building the thing that they're trying to hire for, because they're only going to tie themselves up in knots. And I've seen this a number of times. I've been part of a number of ed tech incubators, and what we found is that typically in one of those companies, you'll have 2 or 3 developers, maybe a product. Besides a product manager, you might have a head of engineering and a lead developer and maybe a UX person and maybe a QA person. So now you're up to 3 or 4 people. Unless those people are paid peanuts, and you can do that in some developing economies, as soon as you start paying people decent market rates, you're talking $500,000 spend for a team, kind of at minimum, which can be pretty expensive for a startup. And what we've done is we've designed our pricing to be aligned with the size and the growth of our customers. So we have minimums usually that range in from about 15 to 25K per quarter, which gets you a certain amount of usage, which gets you to maybe $75,000 to $100,000 a year, and then we hope and plan to see you grow from there. But that's less than the cost of one developer. So that's kind of how we look at it. And for that, you get a flexible, powerful platform that you can build courseware broadly on. We do have customers that are, much larger, and they serve hundreds of thousands of students, or they serve students through programs that generate lots of revenue, and we have different deals for those, that are more aligned with the spend of an organization. But I think as a rule of thumb, you should count on spending, if you're an ed tech company that's doing courseware, you should expect on spending about 10% of your revenues on your platform capability. And I've seen that across a number of institutions. Okay, we've got a few more questions. Let's see. Can educational URLs and specific course materials be loaded into the system? Yes, you can either load them in or you can point to those systems. And because of the integration capabilities and the LTI support that we have, if those capabilities are inside the firewall of the institution, we have ways of dealing with that, and we've done that on a number of occasions. All right, let's see. Cost. Can individual instructors use this, or is it for institutions? I think our first market is that this is for institutions and for courseware developers. I would put instructors in a third category, and instructors generally, need classroom features that you often find in an LMS that are less important in more of a publishing model. So if you see yourself as an educator that's a publisher of your materials, then I think this potentially is something for you. We tend not to this year have pricing for that for individuals, though we have strategic objectives to kind of open up the platform to the individual market, but that's kind of a secondary priority for us. We would tend to do that in the context of an institution. Let's see if there's anything else. No, it looks like, let's see. Who's your target customer? Individual educators, department chairs, individual universities. I think that, we tend to again work with schools, programs, deans, because as opposed to individual educators. I think, frankly, there are other solutions, including our parent company's platform, MindTap, that if you're an individual instructor and using that platform, especially with content that's designed for it, is a very, very powerful thing. So we tend to stay out of that market, and we're much more focused on not the build to ship world of those kind of products, but the build to order world where institutions, programs, innovators, even innovation programs are using our platform. I'll give a quick example there. There's a major university that has a product innovation group. In fact, we just started talking with a second one with a similar structure, and with each of those, the conversation is around supporting their innovation programs. So in those contexts, actually, they may want to empower their own faculty to be innovators on a platform like this. All right, let's see if there's anything else here. I think that's about it, and I think we're about out of time. So with that, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining this call. Thanks on behalf of Learning Objects and our parent company, Cengage. If you want to reach out and have more questions or want to have a follow-up conversation, again, my Twitter handle is @BillHughes_EDU. Thank you and have a terrific day.